Welcome to the Triple RS podcast with me, Ashna Taktani. Here to let you know that no matter what you face in life, you are not alone. We do this through a safe, judgment-free community where we share relatable stories for relatable students from relatable scenes. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Triple XRS podcast with me, Ashna Taktani. Today's guest is someone who is quite dear to me. She is one of my first ever mentors, although I know that if she were to speak now, she would say, no, Ashna, I was your first mentor. So we'll change it. She is she is my first mentor and quite an accomplished woman as well. She's a CEO, video expert, executive producer, media consultant, and speaker. Her career includes working with TV stations like BBC to being an executive producer and head of events at Dubai One. She launched her own production company, TI22 Films, in January 2011, which has won 25 New York Festival awards and counting, if I'm not wrong, and a Cannes Corporate Media and TV Award. She's worked with some of the globe's largest multinationals and broadcasters, such as the National Geographic, Discovery Channel, the Times of India, and so many more. Not only that, but she also works quite closely with government entities on their video content and strategy, including the likes of ENOC, DAFSA, DCAA, EGA, DMI, to name a few. And she's also executive produced the daily live international TV show, Studio EXPO, which covered and broadcasted the daily events and activities of Expo 2020 Dubai. It was quite an incredible project and one that she gave me the honor to be a part of as well as the kids presenter. And the show featured a wide range of high-profile guests from presidents to Michelin star chefs. That's right, real presidents of actual countries. In 2023, her latest adventure is executive producing the new daily lifestyle show on Dubai One, DXB Today. And she is also an active member of the business community, being a long-standing member of the Young Arab Leaders and a regional consultant for BNI New Dubai. So please welcome none other than, like I said, my very own mentor, such an incredible and accomplished woman, Reim El Houni. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Ashna. I really appreciate it. I appreciate reading my entire bio for your audience. So thank you so much.
It is such an honor to have you here. Like I said in our earlier conversations, it feels like, I wouldn't say like I'm not really sure if I've had any full circle moments ever, but it sort of feels something very similar. For today's story time, in the last few guest episodes, I've let the guests share story time, but this one I feel like I will do it. It's about a woman who started her own company in Dubai, mainly because she wanted to spend more time with her kids. And so she went to this networking event where she met another incredible lady who had also recently started her own company. And through the networking event, they ended up becoming very close friends. And one day, the two ladies were going out with each other, and the lady, the one who the mom met at the networking event, so she saw the baby and she said, this kid is going to end up in media. Now, just for a little bit of context, the mom and her husband, so the kid's dad, they both were chartered accountants. They worked in finance, and the mom was like, "You're crazy. This kid's gonna end up somewhere in finance, somewhere in a more corporate, more typical and job rather than media. She's definitely not gonna go there." And the other lady said, "Trust me, you'll see. She's gonna end up in media." I think around maybe 5 years later, the kid was on radio, and from there on, her journey began. And her mentor was the other lady who said she would end up in media. And I know it's a bit confusing as a listener because you're like, which lady, who, what kid? So the mom is my mom. The kid is me. And the other lady who knew that I was going to end up in media, even when I was like maybe 2 years old, is Reem. She's our guest today. So she knew all along. And only God knows how she knew. It's crazy. I mean, who would think you look at a 2-year-old and be like, no, I know exactly where you're going in life. How would you?
You can spot it. You can spot the talent. You can spot it. So, and I think, it's one of those situations where I remember you being a very, very confident, even I actually don't remember two, maybe like three, four. I definitely remember from four onwards. You're very, very confident. And I think, not just confident, but conversational and curious. And I think that's what's key. When you start to spot those kind of skills in a kid, you're like, okay, there's something here but also it's important to recognize that it needs to be nurtured, because you see a lot of very, very talented kids, but if they're not in the right ecosystem, then potentially they may not go in that direction. So I guess in your story, I'm glad that I could allow or bring that to your family, because I know you're very uh, accounting, financial mindset family. So I know this is a bit unconventional for your parents. So I'm glad that that was the beginning of them potentially seeing a new future for you.
Yeah, and it's definitely not unconventional anymore. It is very much normal. Silence on set has become a term that is used more than it should be around our household. My mom's on a meeting, nothing to do with media. Silence on set because she knows that that's the kind of way me, my sister, everybody in our house. That's how we speak now. So, yeah, it's quite a change, but we love it. It's incredible. But let's talk about your journey today. Walk us through the timeline of your journey, how things started for you. How did you know? You're obviously very good at spotting other people's talent or their futures in the media industry. How did you spot that in yourself?
I think that's a great question. And honestly, I can tell you that it started from my childhood. So I was so obsessed, I still am, with the world of film and TV. And I used to watch way too many shows and too many films. I still do. And I think it's one of those where, I really believe that if you follow your passion, you will find the right opportunities. So for me, I followed that passion to the extent that, like, my first internships, my first work experiences were all in TV stations when I was, I think, 14 years old and then 16 years old. At the age of 16, I was very fortunate to do a work experience stint at MBC, Middle East Broadcasting Centre, when they were still based in London. And I remember walking into that studio for the very first time, and it was the news, and just having that feeling. I was in the gallery, and I had that feeling of like, wow, I get to see something that nobody else sees, that kind of behind the scenes peek. And also just watching the producer, and they were counting down, and it just felt so exciting that I just thought, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. This is the industry I want to be in. And I think it was also that realization that although I watched a lot of content, I now had the opportunity to create content as well. So I knew from a very young age, because it got me excited. I was in that environment and it got me very excited. And in order to help continue that excitement, something not many people know, one of my first jobs was in a video store. So I used to work in a video store on weekends, evenings. I eventually managed the video store because that was one of the best ways for me to keep watching content. So I used to rent out content every night, rent out VHS tapes. Yes, I'm that old. And it was great. And it just kept me, very involved in new content and new programming coming out. And that really was the beginning of my obsession into growing in this industry.
Wow, and obviously from there on, you went to achieve great things. In our initial conversations, you spoke about your dad having a lot of impact on you. How important do you think it is to have someone who supports you, or to have a supportive environment, especially when you're venturing out into an industry like media?
I think I was really fortunate because I think being, an Arab female, I grew up in London, but still very culturally, going into media is not always the most accepted route because it's not very conventional. And I think because my father, and in fact the whole family were in media, they're in print media. I think that made it a little bit more acceptable that, okay, we've got media in the family. I'm not going so, left field. And honestly, credit to my mom, because my mom is a doctor, and it's a bit more traditional, but she, really embraced the fact that I was following my passion and following something that, I was doing well in. So being in that environment really supported me. I think neither of them ever made me feel that I was in the wrong industry or the wrong career. And just supported that journey. It did involve a lot of education, however, because in our industry, things aren't 9 to 5, timings are unconventional, you often work at night, through the night. So there was a lot of education that had to happen in terms of, what am I doing in the middle of the night, where am I going? But I think once they understood, the industry, it got easier. And I'm very fortunate for that level of support.
It is something that I think a lot of people take as granted when they shouldn't, especially when, it's quite new to the family, so their understanding really does mean the world. Did you ever have any moments like self-doubt, like what am I doing here, or like I'm not good enough to be here, or just this is crazy, how, why am I here, sort of thing?
No.
No.
Like on a serious note, I'm very confident and I'm very passionate about what I do, and I really believe that education is a solution to everything. Like if you learn everything there is to learn about the opportunity that you're going into, you are going to be filled with confidence and be able to take on whatever challenges set in front of you. So I don't think I ever had a feeling of what am I doing here, because every step that I took was a conscious step. Like every step was one where I wanted that opportunity and I went out of my way to make sure I got that opportunity. So I don't think that I ever had that level of, I guess, imposter syndrome. But I would say to counteract that, I put myself in a state of imposter syndrome regularly. Because if you're somebody who's always stepping out of their comfort zone and you're always taking new opportunities, then you're always unsure of where you are, but you know you want to do it, right? You know you want to go to that next step. You just need to learn. So I'll give you an example. When I got into this industry, I literally sat there and I used to record all my favorite TV shows on VHS tape, and I would watch them and I would write all the names in the credits. I'd write them on a piece of paper. And I knew that I wanted to work at the BBC. And, I knew all the email addresses at the BBC were first name dot surname at bbc.co.uk. Right. So if I had now listed everybody's name in the credits, I would just email all of them. Right. So you need to have a level of confidence and persistence and focus to do that. So I used to email consistently first name dot surname at bbc.co.uk. Eventually, I got an email back. Eventually, I got an email back from a very popular BBC TV show called Watchdog. And they said, we're ready to take you on as an intern. I said, great. Did I have imposter syndrome? Did I know what I was going to do? No. Had I ever been in a studio before? No. But it was an opportunity that I knew I wanted, right? So that's what I mean when I'm answering that question, is that I feel like every step of the way, I knew what I was doing. It was where I wanted to be. But you have to learn and you have to get over those hurdles to own it and move on to the next opportunity.
Just a quick question, how long did it take you to intern at the BBC?
I want to say it was a few months. It was like a few months of emailing, but I was
Wow.
consistent. Like I was emailing like religiously, and it worked in the end. And I really, because it worked, and I think how old was I? I think I was like 18 at that point. Because it worked, it taught me that being persistent works. Right. So like on my last day at Watchdog, I remember standing there holding my BBC pass, and I was like, I don't want to give this pass up. Like, I want to stay in this building. How do I stay in this building? What do I do? And I remember walking from one department to the next department, and I'd walk and I'd knock on their door and I'd go, hi, my name is Reem and I'm an intern on Watchdog, and today's my last day, which means I'm available. And they'd go, oh, that's great, but we don't have anything available for you. And I'd be like, okay, no problem. I'd go to the next department. I'm like, hi, my name is Reem. It's my last day. I'm available. And I'd be like, okay, well, we can't help you, but good luck. And I did that. I think by the seventh or eighth department, there was a lady at BBC Education, and she said, hi, my name is Reem, and I'm an intern. It's my last day. I'm available. And she's like, oh, well, we're about to start a new series. Can you research? I'm like, yep, I can research. I said, great. Well, if you're ready to research, we can take you on from tomorrow. I can do it. I will research. And I ended up working with that producer for almost 2 years. And whilst I was at university, so I was at university, I think 2 days a week, and I was at BBC Education 3 days a week as a researcher. So when I was 18, that was the first time I saw my name on the credits as a researcher. But the reason I'm telling you this story is because it was yet another example of how the persistence paid off. Persistence, confidence, knocking on each door. 7 people said no. The 8th person said yes. I got that opportunity. Had I actually been a researcher before? No. Did I have a bit of imposter syndrome? Sure, I hadn't done it before, but that's the only way you learn, right? So, and I really baptism by fire. I got that experience and can confidently say I'm a researcher. So you have to be confident in yourself and know why you're doing something and learn as you go.
That is so important, to learn as you go, to constantly change. And you're right, imposter syndrome, it's kind of always going to be there whenever you step out of your comfort zone. You're going to have that. But I think the important thing is do you want to be here? Do you want to do this? Then stop questioning. Just do it. Quite literally, just do it. It's easier said than done. But when you really do want something and you
You
want
say
something
that.
everything.
You say easier said than done, but I think it's only easier said than done the first time and maybe the second time. And then once you've done it a few times, now it's normal. Now you've got used to going after what you want. So now I'm in a zone where, like, whatever it is I want, I know I'm getting. I'm getting because I've put it out there, I've told enough people, I'm attracting it, I'm doing the work. It's not just imagining. I'm focusing, I'm being persistent, I'm taking the action, I'm doing the work to get that opportunity. So it is uncomfortable the first time, the second time, but that's the point, right? To get over that hurdle.
Yeah, as long as you're doing something, that's again very important. A lot of people just spend a lot of time daydreaming, imagining, but it's not necessarily going to come here. I mean, we talk a lot about manifestation, attraction. It's important, it really is, but doing something side by side is just as important because you're not really going to get anywhere without it. So, yeah, thank you so much for that. Now, I want to talk about so you obviously did a lot of different roles, right? Now you are an executive producer, but how important do you think it was to try out those different roles? And can you give us a list of what it was that you did, what all you tried out?
Super important. And I'm so glad you asked this question because it drives me crazy when I see people who, especially unfortunately in the local market, who graduate from university and they graduate and they say, I'm a producer, I'm a director. And I'm like, okay, what have you produced? And they'll say, my university project. And I'm like, that's great, but that is not the real world. So unless you've actually worked your way up in the industry, you don't actually understand how things work. So for me personally, I started out as a runner. So a runner is literally the person who goes and runs. Like, so when someone says, fetch me that thing, get a runner, the runner goes and gets it. So I was a runner, a production assistant, a production manager, assistant producer, a producer, a senior producer, and then an executive producer. And then obviously I run my company, so I'm a CEO. So that's like a whole ladder I worked up. But not just that, I actually trained in the camera department because I went through a whole phase of my life where I thought I would be a camera person. But I'm very, very grateful, although I didn't end up being a camera person in the end, but I'm very grateful for that time because I think I spent 6 months at the London studios, which is one of the largest studios in the UK. And I was on their camera team as a trainee. And the London studios does shows like the Graham Norton show. It does things like there were a lot of popular music shows in the UK at the time, a few sitcoms, and you basically every day you're on a different show. I learned so much from that experience of just being exposed to all those different shows, but also being on the camera team, like understanding what the technical side of things looks like, what's involved, how heavy are cable. Believe it or not, I was a cable basher. For those people who don't know what a cable basher is, there's a camera person, there's a camera assistant, and then there's a cable basher. That's the person who's just responsible for carrying the cables. The cables are heavy, and the fact that I've had that experience and I know that, like, I have so much more empathy for those roles and so much more understanding now that I'm an executive producer. So I understand the importance of breaks. I understand the importance of having a good lunch. I understand that because these crew are on their feet all the time, which the production office don't fully always understand unless they have gone through that experience themselves. So to answer your question, super important. And I think that I'm a much better producer and exec producer because I've worked my way up and because I've experienced all of these roles. And I do my best to think from their perspective when we're managing a production. And that's really why I think we have such great teams because they appreciate the fact that I understand their roles and respect them in the ecosystem.
That is so important. And we're actually going to touch upon that very, very soon. You work in an environment which is so high pressure. There is so much uncertainty, so much stress. Like I can just if I think about it, right? Expo 2020. Those when I was like backstage and it wasn't my segment yet or I was still preparing and all of a sudden something's not working. The teleprompter stops working or the script is from a yesterday's script. I just remember those scenes and you were so calm. Like other people are panicking. The presenters are panicking. What's going on? But you were so calm. And then I automatically saw that shift in them as well. So we're going to just talk about that right now. How do you manage your emotions under such high pressure environments?
I think it's another excellent question. And you play those quizzes and people say like, what would your superpower be, or what is your superpower? Power. I think my superpower is staying calm. And I think it's just experience. I think you start to understand and realize, especially as an executive producer of a show, that your mood and your state of mind affects everybody. So it's so important for me to stay calm, because if I'm calm, then the team is calm, then the presenters are calm, and it's a ripple down effect, right? But if I've like lost my cool, then that doesn't help anybody, because you've now got a whole stressed out team. You've got presenters who now have to be calm and pleasant and jolly on camera, and they're all feeling stressed. So it really does translate to everyone else. So when you understand the importance, you pay more attention to how you respond to things. I think it's also breathing. I tend to be quite slow. So, if something goes wrong, I like pause for a moment. I won't respond straight away, right? I'll pause, because you learn that the best thing you can do is buy time. You need to buy time to think through what is the most logical next step. Right? That's literally all you need to do. What is the most logical next step? And then you get through that. What is the most logical next step? Then you get through that. And I think the third thing I would say is being prepared. So I don't go into any live show thinking everything's going to go well, right? I want it to. In my head, I've visualized an outstanding show where everything goes well. The reality is something always goes wrong. So if you've done it enough times, you start to realize, okay, what is my plan B? What is my plan C? What is my plan D? What is my plan E? And you literally go all the way down to Z, right? You want to be in a situation where no matter what goes wrong, you know what you're going to do. So because you've pre-thought through all of those possibilities, when it actually happens, generally speaking, you know what to do. It's not an issue. It's not like, oh, what do we do now? It's like you've kind of thought it through. It's like, okay, fine. The technology didn't work. What's the solution? Okay, the auto cue didn't work, but the comms still work. I can cue them. Okay, nothing works. What do we do? Go to commercial, right? You go to commercial. Now I've bought myself time. I've bought myself 2, 3 minutes to figure out what to do next. So it's always about that next logical step, and just realizing the importance of you keeping your cool, because that impacts everyone.
I guess it's like the few situations when overthinking actually does help you instead of kind of breaking you down, because it's not just overthinking about things that don't exist, it's overthinking about things as a cautionary measure, and then it does end up helping you. Um,
Totally. I mean, just to answer, I wanted to add to that, because like Expo is a great example, right? Because Expo is an example where none of us knew what to expect, right? And the first day, I mean, I can tell a lot of stories. I'm not going to go into detail, but like the first day was traumatic. There's so many things that went wrong, so many things in my world, so many things. However, I remember finishing that day and getting off air, and everyone going, "Oh, that was such an amazing show. That was great. Oh, well done." So they didn't know. They didn't know everything went wrong, because from their perspective, they still watched a very smooth show. But because everything went wrong, it meant that I was much more prepared the second day. So the second day, it was like, okay, what are all the things that went wrong the first day? What can we prepare as a backup plan to make sure that we know what to do tomorrow? And the second day, new things went wrong. So then I was like, okay, what are all the things that went wrong today that we can prepare and fix, so that the third day, it actually became a running joke at Expo, because I used to send a daily email to all departments, with every single thing that went wrong that day. And then the second day, I'd send a follow up with every single thing. And the goal was, to get this email as short as possible, because now that we've experienced all these things going wrong, we are now fully prepared, for every eventuality that comes up.
I remember those texts on the first day. I think the studio wasn't available, something like that. And I was just reading it from home, and I was like, "Oh my god, um, what must be happening? Like, behind the scenes. I can't even imagine." But like I said, again, you always somehow maintain your composure. One thing you said was about buying time. That is so important. No matter what you're doing, no matter which situation you're in, buying time is the best thing you can do. I use this one trick because I get a few questions on public speaking, and like if something goes wrong, what do you do? I like to ask the question, "Can you hear me down the back?" right? And obviously, then they'll respond to you. Other people will say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we can hear you here too." That kind of buys you a few seconds if you ever forget like what you have to say. And I didn't know it was actually something quite useful until now, obviously. So buying your time is very important. In any way that you can, and sometimes it's just as simple as a few deep breaths. So if you're listening to this and you ever are in such a high pressured environment, then remember, just take a few deep breaths, buy yourself some time, and then you automatically start, switch your gear into a logical thinking state. You've obviously given great advice to people in the media industry or producers who, face these kind of situations. What is one thing that you would like to say to teenagers who are coping with high stress levels?
I think honestly, you need to look at what's the worst that can happen. Like that's a question that I ask consistently, which is whatever it is that's going wrong in life or that isn't going the way you want it to. It's like, okay, what's the worst that's happened? Because once you realize that actually it's not that bad, actually it's not life or death, actually you're gonna get over this, you start to realize that perhaps we don't need to overthink some things. Perhaps we don't need to feel the way we do. And I think I wish I knew that earlier, like the level of stress that I used to have over situations. You say I'm calm, exposure, yes, but it doesn't mean that internally, sometimes you are panicked. Sometimes you are trying to overcome things. And I think it's only as I got older that I realized what's the worst that can happen? As long as you're calm, you've thought it through, no one's died, you can start again. It's really just to take your time and not overthink or over panic.
You're right. What is the worst that can happen? Think about that. If it's not, it's usually doesn't end up being that bad. So if you got a bad grade and you are or used to be like me who would cry over a bad grade for 2 consecutive days because it's normal. And I get you. If academic validation is your thing, I do understand. But really, nobody died. It's something to learn from. You failed, first attempt in learning, move on. So that's very important. Now we're gonna go back to what you said about understanding. You've obviously done these different roles, and you said it's really important because it helps you understand and appreciate the people who go through those roles now, which is obviously why you have such a great team. Your career involves juggling diverse personalities, again in very high stakes situations. So, how do you navigate these dynamics to foster cooperation? And obviously, conflict is inevitable. So, how do you deal with that with different types of personalities?
So there's a quote that I really like. I'm not sure who said it originally, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And for me, that's a key thing because I've realized that, like with anything, if you want to have a positive environment, you want people to work in a cohesive space, they need to feel heard. They need to feel like, I understand them, I understand their challenges, I understand their objectives. So I make a very conscious effort to get to know the personalities that I'm working with, to make sure that they gel well together, that there is an understanding, that we're all on the same page. And I think because of that, there a mutual respect is developed where they realize that if I'm saying something like, I need you to stop speaking, I need someone else to start speaking, that there's nothing personal, that I'm actually making these suggestions in order to create the best show possible that is in all of our interest. So you start to develop a trust where you realize we're all on the same page. We're all on the same page to develop the best show. So I rarely have conflicts or have issues with personalities because of the effort I make to ensure that they feel heard and we get along. And sometimes it's small things. Sometimes it's like understanding that, for example, one of our presenters loves Formula One, like but understanding like that's a passion for her. So, okay, we're about to have a shoot at Formula One. Let's get that presenter on that show. So it's like when you start to know what drives people, what excites people, what their passions are, then you're able to actually make it a positive experience for them as well. So I think that's the key with personalities, understanding what makes them tick, making sure they feel heard, and making sure everything's fair amongst the whole ecosystem. Every now and then you get, people or situations that don't vibe or don't understand the greater context. It happens. But, I look at the long term game and, I want to continue working with people who understand it's a team sport. So if that happens to be you, you may be benched, but ultimately, everyone we work with understands the team dynamics and that we're all supporting each other.
Right, and that's very important as well. And obviously, you do it in such high pressured, very important environments, but it could even be something simple as a group project. The amount of times when it's like there was only one person who's actually putting in the work. And then you've obviously got like three other people who are just there who have paired up with you because they know you're going to do the work. In those kind of situations, what advice would you give to that one person who always does the work?
I think you need to understand, is it in your interest? So I think you start to, don't worry so much about them. They're on their own journey and it's going to catch up with them eventually. So nobody can continue riding someone else's coattails forever. They can do it for a short period of time and then that's their future. Don't worry about them. Worry about you. So is it in your interest to put in all the work? Will it affect your grade if you don't put in all the work? Are you going to be perceived differently? So answer those questions for yourself. And if the answer is you need to do it, it affects your grade, you do what you need to do. I'm very much of a belief that you can't affect other people. You can only affect what you do, right? You can only focus on your own lane. So you focus on your own lane, you do the best you can, that's all you can ask for. But someone else around you isn't behaving the way you need them to, you can't change other people, so you need to let that go and move on. That's my opinion.
Acceptance. That is very important. That acceptance of, yeah, I can't control them, so it is what it is. But also at the same time, a lot of people don't do it. Like if you're that one person in the group project, a lot of people don't do it just out of spite. Like, how dare they? But you're right. If it affects you too, then why are you ruining your own grade just because you don't want to put in the work with
Think
that
about
person?
your own interest. And also, is it really worth a confrontation? I think that's the other thing as I've got older. It's like, I can't be bothered to argue with anybody. It's like, no, okay, I know for next time. I won't partner with you next time. I think the biggest lesson in life is you learn from today, learn that lesson, and act differently tomorrow. You've made the decision already. They're on your group already.
That
Not
is
much you can
so
do at this
wise.
point.
That is so wise. And I am afraid to say, but this is the end of our episode. And I know the listeners at home are probably saying, oh man, except, is it really? No, not actually. We've got a bonus episode. Reem being the media mogul and guru that she is, there are a lot of questions that people have been sending in. They've been very excited to talk to you, by the way, about your insight into the media industry, and also a bonus rapid fire round that we will be doing. So some very exciting things coming up in our next episode. Stay tuned. We've got a bonus episode coming in, and I know my DMs will be filled for the next 2 weeks. No, I cannot publish it any earlier. It is bi-weekly. So just wait, put on that notification, put on that alarm. Make sure to follow the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And we will be coming to you very shortly with a bonus episode with none other than Reem El Houni. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Our incredible listener. Thank you very much for joining the Triple XRS community. Thank you for listening to this episode, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
1,